Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cup of Joe with Joe and Joe podcast. I'm your host, Joe, and with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Joe.
Well, that's some more Bunny Girl to talk about. We gotta talk about Futaba tonight. We're talking about Futaba's big arc. That's the word you were thinking I was going to say after big. And it's very important. This is personally one of my favorites. I like Futaba quite a lot. But Joe, what do you think about this arc?
The more I think about it, the more I am inclined to say I also quite enjoy this arc, because at first I didn't think that I would like this arc as much on revisiting it, but the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, no, this is actually pretty good. So arc 3, dealing with Futaba. First 2, we had Mai, and then we had Tomoe. Now we're on to the best friend. She's one of the original trio, I guess you could say, between Sakuta, our main boy, Futaba, the main girl, and then Sakuta's best friend, other boy, whose name we still do not know, and will never know in perpetuity. Amen.
One thing that right off the bat that I love about this arc, started to get a sense of like after the arc with Tomoe, I was like, okay, so this is gonna be, new girl, new physics explanation, new weird supernatural funky thing going on, and they're all gonna fall in love with Sakuta. Although there is, some love interest in this arc, main thing that this focuses on is friendship. That's probably why I love it so much, because there's a great scene in episode 8 where they're all just hanging out, and it's by far my favorite in this little arc that we'll get to, but that's just kind of like laying the groundwork. Like, this arc is really about like Sakuta, Futaba, and other side character dudes' friendship.
So getting into it, we should talk about Futaba's adolescent and or puberty syndrome effects. Sakuta and Mai going out on a little date, just like walking around town. They end up seeing someone they think they recognize down a dark, creepy alley. And no, it's not the drug dealer who always sells them the meth that they do all the time in Sakuta's apartment. It is, in fact, Futaba. And they find her in an internet cafe or a manga cafe. One of the two. It doesn't really matter. They find her somewhere she's not normally around, and they're like, what the hell are you doing around here? But the twist is that Sakuta's talking on the phone to Futaba, but when they find the Futaba in the cafe, she's all not talking on a phone, and they're like, what is this? And so Futaba, being the smartest character in the show that she is, immediately puts it together. She's like, oh, you're talking to me on the phone, aren't you? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, uh-huh. And you can see me here? And he's like, yeah, still yeah. She's like, oh, okay, time for the quantum explanation bullshit. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm blanking on what was the reasoning that they gave for what was happening.
From what I remember, Futaba was one of the first girls to develop in their school group, like amongst all the other girls. And so she has like one of the most womanly figures from a very young age. And she doesn't like that all the guys are like noticing that and staring at her. And she's kind of like, this kind of fucking sucks, dude. But at the same time, another aspect or another part of her craves attention, because she doesn't really ever put herself out there. She tends to spend all of her time stuck in the lab, always explaining to Sakuta quantum entanglement. So she starts posting lewd images of herself, like on different apps, whatever they might be. I don't know. They don't explain them to us, as a way to try and garner attention. And like the one part of her enjoys the attention, and the other part of her hates herself for sexualizing her body in that way. And so because of this utter dichotomy, instead of just developing a split personality, she literally splits into two people, and they cannot observe each other, or they're afraid to observe each other. It's weird, sciencey, mumbo-jumbo BS. Either way, they never actually come face-to-face in the show because, I don't know, the universe would end or something.
Yeah, I think this one had the weakest physics explanation, but one thing that I also thought was really enjoyable with this is like, usually when they have these like, doppelganger episodes, whether it's kind of like a trope in anime, but it's also just a trope in media. A lot of times they'll make one good and one bad. And at first, that's what they do. They try and, like, the Futaba that they meet at the manga cafe place is like, oh yeah, she's ruining my life. Like, oh, she kicked me out. I can't go home. And you're like, damn, like, that's the copy Futaba. But then more and more when you start talking to the suspected copy Futaba, you're like, damn, this is the real one, and the other one's the copy. Sakuta does a really good job of not taking sides, and I think there actually is a line where he says, like, I'm on Futaba's side. One of them asks, like, who do you believe? He's like, I believe Futaba, which was really good, where he was just like, look, I'm not trying to, force one thing on the other. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to happen, and I'm trying to help my friend.
Yeah, it's, again, a lesser writer probably would have been like, hey, let's make one of them bad one of them good. And then he just gets to take a side, and then we can fight off the bad one in whatever way we're gonna do, and maybe he'll kick them in the shin when he goes in for the fake out punch. It's like, no, they're both Futaba. Is the point that is very clearly put across. Like, both of these are aspects of the true Futaba. The thing is, they're just in two separate bodies right now. So you need like peanut butter and jelly to reach their apex. Fucking put them together.
I also like how at first it's portrayed that, all these pictures and this kind of like lewd account that she created, it's like, oh, the new one made that. Quickly we find out Futaba explains like, no, I've had it for a while actually before this happened. Like, I think this is kind of just me like a buildup of having it for a while and just needing to like get it all out, which was also another good touch where it's like, oh, it does good job for her character to be like, yes, even though on the outside she has like all nice and controlled, really smart and all that, she still had things that were going on, and they don't just like blame the supernatural stuff for why it was happening.
The supernatural stuff is just there to propel these characters into all these situations, and we get to see how they deal with them. Puberty syndrome cannot occur unless something else leads to it. So we get to see what led up to this moment, and it was all those things that we just previously talked about with the lewd images and the accounts and the different ways of viewing herself and like the dichotomy of that shit. Solid stuff. So actually dealing with the two separate Futabas, it's intriguing because you get to see, again, the two different aspects of her mind. You see how one responds to the other because they're kind of playing a game of telephone between the two of them. That makes sense if you know how the arc ends anyway. Foreshadowing. But it's in between, ping-ponging between the two Futabas, that we also run into another character on a rainy day here. And Joe, I don't think we mentioned this character before, so why don't you talk about Shoko?
I believe it's mentioned in the first arc that when Sakata, talks to Mai, he talks about this girl that he met when, he was dealing with the initial bout of puberty syndrome, and it was his high schooler that came up and talked to him. And her name was Shoko Makinahara. And we find out that the reason he went to the high school that he went to was because he wanted to find her and like thank her for helping him, and also because that was his first crush. But more and more he does research, and he couldn't find her at all. And there is no record of a Shoko Makinahara ever going to that school. And one day they find a stray cat, and they're checking it out, and there's this little, like, I don't know, like grade schooler hanging out with it. They're asking like, oh, what's your name, whatever, is this your cat? And she says her name is Shoko. Sakuta's like, holy shit, that's her. She kind of becomes part of the group now, and we don't get like a full dedicated background of what's going on, but we get very much hints that this is something big to come.
So Sakuta's house ends up just becoming the harem pad. Pretty chill.
It'd be a cool place to hang out, man. I mean, he's got none of his parents are hanging out. It's just him, Kaede, Mai, and Futaba just like hang. And then Shoko stops by with the cat. I mean, they have two cats now. Like, Jesus Christ, that's pretty sick.
One Futaba ends up staying at Sakuta's place, and of course, Mai ends up staying over because she's just like, I don't quite trust this. I still trust you, but also this is an excuse for me to spend more time with you, because another part of this arc is that since Mai is working again, doing all of her acting, showbiz stuff, she hasn't had enough time to actually stick around and hang out with Sakuta, and they like just got together. At least it feels like it just got together for us. So she's like, I'll spend some time with you, and they have a nice, cute little scene one of the nights, because Futaba is sleeping in Sakuta's room, so Sakuta just ends up staying, like, in the living room, and they have a cute little scene together. And of course, just when you think they're gonna, like, embrace, do a little smooch, or something like that, Sakuta's just like, Sakuta asks Mai, he's like, hey, I'm gonna have to spend the next day or two helping Futaba. Like, this is gonna be full time, because we can't have two Futabas running around. That ain't right. And Mai, again, understanding angel that she is just like, yeah, I figured you would ask about that, so it's okay, do what you gotta do, you gotta help a friend. Mai walks off, and then he just fucking bear hugs the pillow and rolls around like a pig in mud. Oh baby, it's so good.
It's so freaking adorable. And I mean, we've already said it, but Sakuta's a fucking lad. Like, he is the man. He's a bro. Nothing more makes me proud. And this is kind of like the quote unquote big conflict of this arc, is when they're standing on a train station, Sakuta and Futaba. It doesn't matter which one it is, but he's basically talking about the account and being like, hey, we need to figure out what's going on here. Futaba gets a message on her phone from a random number. It's actually to the account, the lewd account that she made. And it's like, oh, oh, I know that school uniform. We should meet up. This, or this. What's your name? And immediately she's like creeped out, like looking around, like, holy crap, do I have a stalker? And right away, Sakata takes the phone, fucking says, I'm calling the cops, blocks the number, and it's like they delete the account, and he spends the night at Futaba's house. I remember in that moment being like, I love how Sakata, it was just like flip of a switch. This is what we're gonna do. You're not gonna worry about this. You're gonna be safe, and I got your back.
It's so nice seeing this protagonist lad going through helping all these people out with their different adolescent syndrome bullshit and not seeing any chink in the armor of him being like, oh, I'm alone with this person. Maybe I could try and like snuggle up to them and do all this sort of stuff. It's like, no, he doesn't do that. And it's just so refreshing. I keep saying it every single time, but it's like, it's one of the things that makes him so endearing. He's not a degenerate fuck. He's an actual person who cares for all of these people in his life, and it's so beautiful. I love you, Sakuta. Mwah!
And it's while they're hanging out at Futaba's, they're kind of, they're having a little sleepover, late night friends, chit chatting. And I think Sakuta basically goes along the lines of like, look, when are you going to ever tell this guy you like him? And she's like, never. He doesn't care about me. And Sakuta's like, bitch, let me prove you wrong. And literally calls this boy up and is like, yo, Futaba's in trouble. Get over here. Hangs up. And this man hauls ass. He flies on his bike and the train to make it to check on Futaba. And immediately you can see just like how heartwarmed Futaba is. Like, oh man, he really does care about me.
From there, they end up just going to a beach. They have some fun. They walk around. They talk. They play with fire sparklers. It's one of those scenes that you watch and you think to yourself, yeah, I have a moment like this with some of my friends. And like, you feel so lucky to have had a moment like that or to be able to relate to something like that because it's just so beautiful. And they watch the sunrise. During this part, the one half of Futaba realizes, I don't think I need all of that attention from the loot account. It's like, I've got two great friends right here. And they have this nice little like photo op and it becomes the background of her phone. This will be important in a second. But the problem is only the one half of Futaba has experienced this. And these two Futabas are still thinking about themselves as separate entities. And so when the other Futaba gets her phone back from Sakuta, after he comes back from the all-nighter that he spent with the other Futaba, she sees the photo on the phone and she's like, I am redundant. I am going to go walk into the ocean now. So she fucks off. Sakuta wakes up and is all like, whoa, where'd Futaba go? Ends up figuring out, oh, I think I know where she went. So he pulls the best friend and he rides his bike through the pouring rain and gets to the school and he finds her just sitting alone in the middle of a classroom. He's all like, you are not going to walk into that ocean. It is not a dichotomy thing. Both of you are one. Amen. She's like, but the photo, I am redundant. And he's like, no, hold that thought. I'm going to pass out and you have to take me to the hospital for a minute. And she's like, what? And then he fucking face plants into a desk. And she's like, oh, Jesus Christ. And so then we wake up, or Sakuto then wakes up in a hospital and he has a little chat with Futaba. And basically he helps her rectify the fact that she's not two separate people. I mean, quite literally she is in this world, but the mental thing is like she shouldn't think of herself as these two separate entities, one who hates her body because of how lewd it is, and one who utilizes that lewdness to get any type of attention that she can. He's like, you gotta rectify this. You have your two friends. We're not going anywhere no matter what you do. We're gonna stick by your side through all of this. And she's just like, what do I do now? And he's just like, talk to her. And he points to the phone. Remember, I said the phone would be important later, and there it is. So she ends up calling herself on the phone, talking, rectifying everything. They're figuring out the shit. Beautifully subtle scene direction here. We never see the Futaba on the other side of the line. That's something that they do throughout the entirety of these two episodes. We never at any point see two Futabas in one setting, or like Futaba talking to Futaba on the phone. They don't cut back and forth between the two of them. Futaba, when she's talking to other Futaba on the phone, we just assume that they're talking because she's responding to someone. It doesn't go insane sci-fi again because that's not the point of the show. And keeping on line with that, to not make it too sci-fi, we never see them merge. We see Futaba talking on the phone. We see Sakuta looking content with himself and with what's going on right now. And then we hear the clatter of a phone. And we cut back and Futaba's not at the phone booth anymore. And he walks over, picks up the phone. He's like, you all good? And Futaba's on the other line just going, I think I figured it out. And it's not we, it's I. Because the two are now one, and they will always be one. And it's good shit, Joe. Some really good shit.
Not just could that have been the final scene and been like, wow, this is a great ending. We get an even cuter one where the three of them, all dress up in their nice little outfits, and they go to like the firework festival. And sometimes in anime, like confessions of love and all that stuff can be a little cringy, or it can be Sakura yelling, I love mine, that I'm a virgin outside of this in the schoolyard. But this, we're watching the fireworks. It's Futaba, Sakata, and other dude, and Futaba just gives best friend a little tug, like, "Oh, come here, I need to whisper something to you." And we don't hear she whispers. We see like the guy make his face, and she basically says like, "Look, you don't need to respond. I did this for me because I just needed to tell you. Like, it's all right." And I love how he didn't try and fake anything, make it seem like give her any like, "Oh, maybe there's a chance or anything." He's like, "No, thanks for telling me. You're a great friend." And just a good, again, like, really, this arc is all about friendship and the little dynamic trio that we have here, because in a lot of anime, the trio, the boy, girl, like the trifecta is like the big thing. But I like how in this one it's there, but it's not the huge overlapping, like, big part of the story.
That about wraps up Arc 3 of Rascal Does Not Dream of Boy and Girl Senpai. Again, contractual obligation. That's right. I didn't fucking forget, all you degenerates thought I would. But hopefully you guys enjoy the show just as much as we do. Let us know what you think about this arc. And with all that being said, remember, we'll love you, we'll leave you, and goodbye.